welcome back to our home libraries. For today's episode, we're actually doing our last book discussion of the year. We will have one more episode, but today we're discussing Royal Holiday by Jasmine Guillory. Trying to get ourselves into the holiday spirit. It's like as soon as Halloween is over, it's Christmas, right? That's how it works, right?
I think so. Yeah, that's how it works for me.
So it's Christmas. Merry Christmas. Anyway, we're going to be spoiling this book for you. So if this is something that you're interested in reading and you don't want it to be spoiled, make sure you stop listening before we get into the questions. As always, come back and listen once you have read. And feel free to head over to our Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube channel if you want to check out some extra content. All of those are our home libraries, plural, because we're two people.
Yeah, it's two of us. So, as Carrie mentioned, we're reading The Royal Holiday. And this one we kind of picked just because we thought it was going to be a little bit hallmarky, just a nice holiday romance. And it follows Vivian Forrest, who's an American social worker, and Malcolm Hudson, who's a charming British private secretary to the Queen. So a pretty important role for the monarchy. And Vivian accompanies her daughter Maddie on a work trip for Maddie to England, but it's around Christmas time and they're going to be spending the Christmas holiday in England. And Vivian unexpectedly finds herself kind of swept into this holiday romance with Malcolm. And we have, grand castles and estates and royal functions and a little bit of British Christmas magic, I guess. And Vivian and Malcolm are trying to navigate this unexpected connection. And we'll see as they both are kind of grappling with some career changes and things like that. So that's the little romance story.
Yeah.
It was not as good as I thought it was going to be. I am a person that very much loves Hallmark Christmas movies. I like the kind of cheesy romance and usually like a sweet story with a kind of minor area of conflict, like nothing that pulls at your emotions too much. So just something kind of neutral. And so that's what I thought this was going to be. And this book does have some sweet moments. But I just felt like it repeated itself a lot. Like the couple of issues that they kept presenting, it just felt like the same sentences were used over and over again. And then the characters would do things that were in conflict with what they how they presented themselves earlier in the book. So it wasn't my favorite. I gave it a 1 out of 5 Christmas trees. It was fine and I read it quickly, but I don't think I won't read this again.
I gave it 2 out of 5 hot toddies. And I feel like it had the potential to be this really great, vacation, royal romance. That's part of why we picked this book. But overall, it was pretty predictable and the characters felt really underdeveloped. I just wanted them to have more depth and I wanted there to be more.
Yeah, and I'm all for predictability. And in a book like this, that normally wouldn't bug me, but I feel like it was because things weren't actually developed.
Well,
the conflict wasn't really a conflict.
Because you like the predictability. You like the Hallmark movie that is, the shark, comes to a small town and runs into her high school boyfriend, and said boyfriend convinces her to quit her New York job and stay in small town. That's what you like.
Yeah,
so you like something that is a little bit predictable, but I don't know. It was predictable in a sense that nothing was really surprising at all. And I feel like, at least with Hallmark type stories, there is something unique about each one. They might have the same overall general story arc, but there's something that makes each one unique. And I just didn't really feel that this book was something unique. And I hate to say that because authors work so hard. Writing is really difficult.
I know. And I feel like though, if it's if you just want like really simple books set at Christmas time with not really actually that much conflict, this might be the right fit for you.
Yeah.
Because like the conflict that was in it really wasn't anything major. So if that's what you're looking for, this might be the right fit.
I
There
won't
we
read it
go.
again. Kayla has said she won't read it again. So,
And like again, like that's not always the benchmark for me for if it's a good read, because we've read other books
yeah.
that I just wouldn't read again because A, like maybe the content was too heavy, or I read it once and or like if it was like a mystery, like then the mystery's gone, so I don't
Yeah.
feel the necessity to read it again. So not always like an issue in regards to like that impacting how I rate something, but yeah, this one was okay. But it did fit the ticket of what I wanted, which is it's set at a royal setting for like a Christmas celebration. That's
Mhm.
definitely like jumps off the page for me. So how does the author capture the essence of like a British Christmas, and how does that contribute to kind of like there was some charming moments in this story.
So, my concern with this question and with answering this question is I Googled the author. She's an American novelist. What of this story is true? Like, what did she extensively research? Did she visit England around Christmas to really experience these things? And what of this story is like a stereotype of what Americans think Christmas is like in England? And I
Mm.
feel like I
Yeah.
can't, because I've never been to England, especially not around Christmas. Like, I've never been. So I don't know what a British Christmas looks like.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, they definitely referenced like figgy pudding, which is a British thing, and I don't think that's like a made up tradition. Um or like a the Christmas cake, which is essentially figgy pudding. But I guess for me, when I read this question, I just thought of like it was set supposedly about like kind of part of like the royal, not family, but like employees of the royal family.
Mm-hmm.
So we have these really like grand estates and homes and cozy fires because they're saying like it's drafty because it's older houses. So like to me, that felt cozy
Mm-hmm.
and Christmassy. Is it specifically British? I don't know. I think that maybe just brought up cozy vibes to me because I do like the idea of like decorations and a actual
Yeah.
fire.
Yeah. I like the idea of an actual fire too.
Yeah. So that's what I thought was like kind of Christmassy and cozy about it. And I like the scenes because they definitely did like touch about like Maddie. I remember her being like in a room with like a fire and like some tea in front of her, and I was like, that just sounds like the perfect start to like a holiday to me. So
It
I like
does.
that.
I
Yeah.
don't really know though how much the Christmas atmosphere really impacts the story though. I feel like it could have
Mm.
happened in the middle of summer and it would have been overall the same story.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably true. But
I want it to
yeah,
be
yeah, that's definitely true.
like when I read a Christmas book, I want it to feel like this is something that as a mood reader I would pick up every December because it
Okay.
reminds
Yeah.
me of what Christmas is like. And
Yeah.
I did not get that from this book. I
Yeah, I
mean,
could see
like
that.
the Christmas Carol. When do you read that? You read it around Christmas.
Summer. No, just
Like
kidding.
when unless you're like in school as a kid and you have to read it in a literature class, you really only read the
Yeah.
Christmas Carol around Christmas. Like that's when it.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I could see that if it wasn't set in winter and at Christmas, like they mentioned it because that's when they decided to set this book, but they could have like switched it out to anything
Yeah,
pretty easily, I would agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
But our two, well, I wouldn't say that he's really a main character, but our little love connection here is Vivian and Malcolm. And they do come from very different backgrounds. She's an American social worker. Um, he is the British private secretary to the Queen. So, totally different lifestyles. How do their individual experiences and career shape their personalities and choices throughout the novel?
Well, I felt like the two big things was that Vivian was kind of on the cusp of maybe taking a promotion at work. And so having Malcolm, who is like a professional, he's worked in the private sector, he's worked, in like, I guess in the service or like a civil servant role, working for the Queen. Not the right term because that's, I guess, that would probably be an American term, but like working in service of like a what am I looking for?
I feel like,
but like
it mentioned he's worked in Parliament too. So like in some way or another, he has worked for British government in some way.
For the government, yeah. So he's worked kind of like, he's seen different facets out there. So like when Vivian's on this like crux of like deciding what to do professionally, she has a really great person like as a sounding board. And then Malcolm is facing this kind of like family issue where his nephew, who he's really close to and kind of like the male like role model to, has decided he's going to go to a different school than what everyone wanted him to, and they're all like upset about it and kind of fighting. And Vivian's able to use her social work background. She's very empathetic to kind of help him see where the nephew's coming from, help him kind of how to communicate with a family member, because we see kind of Malcolm more as like he can communicate really well at his job, but when it came to like friction in his personal life, he wasn't able to handle it maybe as gracefully as he would have liked to. So we see both of them being able to use their backgrounds to help one another.
Yeah, I do think that they complement each other really well, because Vivian is the kind of person, like with her career, she has learned to be really easy to talk to, because social workers, I mean, they work with patients to, help them in their lives. And I think that helps Malcolm, because Malcolm is a bit more of an analytical person who looks at things from a more cut and dry point of view. And I think that Vivian helps him with maybe approaching things with his nephew a little bit better, and he helps her realize that, while this job would be great in terms of career, in terms of representation in the workplace, it doesn't necessarily make her happier than the job that she's doing now. So
yeah,
they
were a good balance for
play
each
off
other.
each other well.
Absolutely.
Yep. This also brings in a theme of romance later in life. So what challenges and advantages do their ages bring into the relationship, and how is this portrayed in the story?
So that was one of the other reasons why I actually did want to read this book, is because we're focusing on they're in their 50s. So I like the idea of like finding love like again or later in life. I feel like a lot of times when we read romance books, it's always like the 20 something. So it was refreshing and nice to see that, because romance can be at any age. So I did enjoy that. And I thought that the author Jasmine did a nice job of, they kind of touched upon some of their past relationships. And while like when you're younger, you do have to touch on, past relationships when you get into something serious with someone, these, like Vivian, the father to her daughter, they were no longer together. So like, there's just a little bit more, like, I don't know, just like more to that than just,
I mean, they've
not
had
to downplay like
lives.
A breakup at any age. Yeah. There's just more layers to it. So I liked that. I thought that was a nice layer added to this book.
Yeah, I agree.
And we kind of already mentioned it, but talking about the work-life balance and like the pursuit of like happiness. So we see that like Vivian and Malcolm do kind of pursue each other because they do find each other making themselves happy. And I don't think that they always, to me, when I was reading it, they don't always put themselves first. Like maybe it's their job first or a family member, things like that. So they put that idea of like, well, we could just like see what happens. Like it is a holiday, but like there's definitely something here. But then they were able to like really, form a really substantial connection and help each other out. We've already talked about a couple of like their big, like frictional moments in their life that they needed like some assistance with, and they were able to help each other with that. And like finding that work-life balance, Malcolm talks about like several times that Vivian can like joke with him, and he appreciates that because he feels like sometimes people just view him as kind of more like buttoned up. Yeah. So they both are kind of figuring out this work-life balance. Vivian, instead of taking on like this promotional role, realizing that like what she's doing is exactly what she wants to be doing, which I feel like is a really refreshing thing to realize. And then for Malcolm to have a personal relationship where he doesn't have to be so buttoned up also helped with his balance.
I liked that Vivian did pro-con lists, and she did it a couple of
Yeah.
times in the book, and even her daughter mentioned it, like, I know you're going to go upstairs and make a pro-con list about this. And I feel like that's so relatable because I do that.
Same.
When I'm
Same.
thinking about, like, should I apply for a PhD, I start making lists in my head, like, I could potentially get a job that I enjoy more, but I have to spend a lot of money to do this, you know? Like, I make lists in my head. So
It
I
helps like
liked,
get it organized.
yeah, I liked the pro-con situation she was doing. And speaking of her daughter, Maddie, she does play a pretty significant role in getting her mother to be open to the idea of a relationship with Malcolm. How do you see that the relationship between Vivian and Maddie evolves over the story? And how does her relationship with Maddie influence her little romance with Malcolm?
Yeah, I feel like this is why also it's neat, like doing like a later, not like late in life, but like a later in life romance where they're in their 50s, because before she had never really brought anyone around Maddie because she was younger, she was growing up, she didn't want to like introduce someone that wasn't um,
Serious.
serious, yeah, to her daughter. And then when she was on this trip, she didn't want to let Maddie know because she just didn't want to like have to try to explain it. So it's funny now that Maddie is old enough, like they could have had like a conversation about it, but I felt like Vivian was like trying to like avoid it. And then Maddie, like, she was so like kind of graceful about it because when they were at like the Christmas dinner or whatever, she was like, yeah, of course mom should stay longer. Like, just kind of made it like like not a big deal, but also helped push Vivian a little bit when Vivian needed like a little push to extend her trip and to spend more time with Malcolm. So I thought the mother-daughter relationship was cute in this.
I do think this is the first little instance that we see. I wouldn't necessarily like inconsistencies in the character that is Vivian, because she doesn't really want to talk to Maddie about these things, but at the same time, when you're reading her inner monologue, she's talking about how, you know, women, it's okay for a woman to be free with her sexuality, and like, but then at the same time doesn't want to be free with her own sexuality. You know what I mean?
Well, and I feel like too, it, I guess it's the idea of like, what hat are you wearing? Like when she has her mom hat on, she doesn't want to talk about those things. But then when she's just thinking about herself and who she is, she's like, yeah, like it's okay to like, go on dates. And she definitely was like attracted to Malcolm and was like thinking about him and, that way. So I think that they're like, that's just juxtaposition, or not juxtaposition. What's the word I'm looking for? Like the duality of life, that there's like multiple like kind of ways that we handle ourselves in different situations, and that sometimes they can be at odds with each other.
I kind of wish that as we as children get older, our parents would confide in us more about those things, because I feel like with my parents, they're divorced. They've been divorced for 7 or 8 years now, and my dad lives by himself. And I always feel like he's like, I know he's got friends, he goes out, he does dinner, but like, does he just sit around the house and watch TV and have no one? And I don't know, I feel like he's lonely, and he could talk to me if he wanted to, you know what I mean? I wouldn't judge him just because I'm his daughter, you know?
Yeah. I feel like it's probably hard to switch that a little bit.
Sure.
Even though your kids are like raised and grown and are doing things on their own, because I still like need my parents all the time for stuff, so I always wonder like if they feel as though they can't need us. Maybe, I don't know
either, but it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
If he needed me to like drive down for a weekend because he was lonely, like I would totally do it, you know?
I know. I'll just have to start inviting him over since we're pretty much right next door to each other.
Oh yeah, you're pretty much neighbors, yeah.
And I do
Anyway,
enjoy his company.
I know. Kayla and I, every time we talk about Dad, this is totally off topic, but, or maybe not, because there is New Year's in this book. When Kayla was pregnant with Anna, she and Jeff came over for a little New Year's thing, and Dad had been out with his friends, so it was me,
Yeah.
Kayla, Jeff. Bradley was not there yet. I wasn't dating Bradley yet. Anna and Rolando.
It was Anna. Yep,
and
Carrie's sister. And
we're all drinking except Kayla. I bought Kayla like sparkling cider so she could have a little bubbles.
And we ordered Buffalo Wild Wings, and it was so good.
Yes, it was so good. Anyway, Dad comes home from wherever he's been, New Year's Eve.
Yeah, he got dropped off in his Uber.
He starts to make himself a martini. And this is so out of character for him. Not the martini. He loves martinis. But what happens next, okay? He shakes it up. He's got it all in his shaker. He does the little shaking thing. He goes to pour it into his martini glass and spills it all over the floor.
The whole floor.
And he just goes, oops. Sits the shaker on the counter and walks away into his bedroom and closes the door.
He put himself to bed.
He left it there. He wouldn't have not done. So we were all looking at each other like, what?
Because he just walked out the room. And then Carrie and I think you and Anna just like cleaned it up. It was, it was just some spilled liquid. It wasn't a big deal. But like your dad would never leave it there. Yeah.
He would never.
He just and put himself to bed. It's so funny.
I was like, how many martinis have you had?
He was so happy. He was martinis. It's just too funny.
We talk about that story all the time. Anyway.
I know, because I just like love it. It's so endearing. He was just like, you know what? I'm just going to put myself to bed. I didn't need that anyway. And like, I feel like we've all had a moment like that.
Yeah. But to just leave it sitting there, so unlike him.
He knew you had it.
We do get several scenes in this book that give us some glimpses into maybe some royal traditions, some royal life. What are some of your favorite royal moments, and how do you think they add depth to the narrative?
I guess I didn't really feel like there were like that many royal moments besides like him like explaining his job. But then he was able to kind of call in like a few favors and get Vivian to see the some of the royal jewels. And they went to I forget where they did like a mass, and I think that just like seeing different aspects of some of the British culture. Like again, there wasn't like a ton of it, but there was definitely some moments, and it was cute. I liked it. I also didn't realize that, and like I've watched The Crown. I don't know why I didn't put it together, but when they say a diary, it's a schedule, and I didn't know that. So I thought that was funny.
Because
I just didn't like put it together.
As being like a book you write your secrets in.
Yeah. So like, and I kind of knew that, but I just didn't really like put much thought into it. And so when he like Vivian like was having him explain like where phrases were different in Britain and what they mean in the States, I thought that was kind of a cute exchange.
I don't really think I had a favorite royal moment, but I really like that they had a private cook. I would love to have a private cook. Not really an exclusively royal thing, but I would love to never have to cook again.
I know. I just said my husband, he was gone for work again, and I hired out to have someone mow our lawn, and I was like, man, if I hired out to have someone cook for me too, I would just be like living
just read all day. Read, play with your kid. That's it. That's all you gotta do.
I know.
That would be the dream. So in this book, the characters also have to confront some of their uncertainties. How do these moments of vulnerability strengthen the bond between Vivian and Malcolm and make the story more relatable?
Well, I felt like the biggest thing for me was when Vivian extended her trip and they did their first kind of date with her extending her trip and her daughter's no longer there. And the date just like was kind of awkward. There was like, it wasn't really flowing like how it had been. And she's like, great, like this was such a mistake. And then eventually he opened up that, it wasn't anything about her. He was just like stressed out about his nephew, Malcolm. And then they were able to like talk and work through it. And I felt like that was just such a relatable and realistic thing that can happen, is like sometimes when things like don't feel right, it's not always about you. It could be something else, but it impacts that relationship. So I like that they were able to like pick up on that and then like course correct and adjust from there. Yeah. So I like that part.
And then when you have something stressful happening in your life, sometimes it's hard to get your brain to not focus on that when you're in other situations.
Yeah.
So it kind of shows how, things that are going on in your life can impact other areas of your life. I thought it was really, I don't know if funny is the right word, but when Vivian goes home, they start exchanging postcards, even though they decided that they weren't going to pursue a relationship or anything. And at one point, she's like, oh, screw it, and tells him that she loves him. And it's like this whole teenager thing, because she sends him this postcard that's like, I'm falling in love with you. And he, like teenage boy, ignores her for weeks.
It's like, why she got
He's just going to pretend it didn't happen. I know, that was so rude.
And that like wasn't like how he was.
Why did she have to reveal her feelings? Like, she just ruined this whole thing. And I was like, are you kidding?
Well, and that was like in odds with what he was saying before like she left. He's like, I think we should try to like see where this can go. So it's like, it was just, that was the stuff to me that felt like a little disjointed in this book.
And that's what I mean about the whole teenager. It turned into a teenager situation, because that is exactly what a teenage boy would do. He would be like, you ruined it by telling me this. You used the L word and you ruined it.
Yeah.
I'm going to pretend this didn't happen. Rude.
I know. The last thing I think that we should touch upon is, we've already kind of talked about it, that this author is kind of known, though actually I guess we didn't talk about this, but she's known for trying to include diversity and inclusive characters. And in this story, kind of how do we see this play out? And I think the big thing is that this is a story about, second chance love, or love when you're no longer 20. But then the other aspect that they brought up is that, Vivian like point blank like asks him like, are you one of a few people of color that work for the royal family? Like, is there anyone else? And how does that feel? And they had like a nice moment where he touched upon that. And then we see it revisited for Vivian as a social worker. She's African American. And so he, like, is it important for you to take on a leadership role? Like, yes, that's representation, but also what you're doing really matters too. So I like that they touched upon those topics.
Yeah, I liked the representation in the workplace conversation.
Yeah.
I think that's an important conversation. I think there's some kind of show out that's about a publishing company. It's totally fiction, and it may or may not be comedy. But I remember the trailer saying something about the main character being the token Black person in the workplace. And I do feel like that there needs to be more conversation through more forms of media about how workplaces can be more diverse and more representative of the population as a whole.
Yeah,
for sure. And that's something that colleges, there was even a law enacted so that colleges would be forced to admit more diverse people.
Definitely bigger conversations, and this book did a nice job of touching on it. So, and I thought she did a really nice job with it, like how she explained it from Malcolm's point of view, and yeah, I thought it was nicely done. So again, some really nice moments in this book, but just some things that felt a little disjointed for me.
Overall, it was just kind of...
It was okay. Yeah.
It was a book.
But we're kind of closing out our second season here of Our Home Library. So next episode, we're just going to do one more, just a short little wrap-up episode for our 2023 season. And just wanted to take a moment to kind of talk about things we enjoyed and just a bunch of all things books. So hopefully you'll tune in for that one.
Maybe give you some spoilers for next year.
Yeah. But for now, yeah.
And if this is the first time you're listening to us, then, there's a whole 2 seasons of things that you can listen to. So go back and listen to that. And we'll definitely be coming back with the new year after our wrap up. And we have lots of exciting things planned for next year. You can hear about that next time. But if you enjoyed our conversation today, be sure to listen to some of our previous episodes. And if you do decide to head over to our Instagram, let us know what you'd like to see us read and discuss for future episodes. Do we want to do an emoji? Should we just
Christmas
do a
tree?
Christmas tree?
Yeah.
Sure. Thinking on the same wavelength. We really appreciate you guys listening, and we'll speak to you guys next time.